Hello. Um, we are working on week 7, and we are reading from How to Read Slowly. And we are in chapter 2 in the section How to Read, or in the section Reading with a Christian Mind. You will have noticed that as I have raised the last 4 questions, I have found it natural not only to observe McCorduck's answers, but to comment from the standpoint of a Christian worldview. I have done this to provide a model. I believe it is the duty of all good readers to see what they are reading in light of their own presuppositions. This does 2 things. First, it tests on the anvil of experience one's own worldview. It is also possible that a person with a different perspective will see what is actually there, but we have missed. We certainly should alter our own views when we find they do not fit the way things are. A recognition of our own proneness to error should be part of every Christian's worldview. Our own personal worldview as Christians will always have many rough spots and gaps and downright mistakes. We will consider later how best to build ourselves a Christian worldview. To be sure, we do not learn the rudiments of it from naturalists and pantheists. We learn it from Scripture. But from naturalists and pantheists, we may learn things we might otherwise miss. And whatever is true is a part of God's truth. There must be a place for it in the world, in our worldview. Second, recognizing the Christian alternative to problems raised in another worldview gives us a contact point with those who are not Christians. True, in our discussion with our friends, we ought not constantly barrage them with our better grasp of the meaning of life, but we should reach out to them where they are. And what better way to be able to show how Christianity, Christ Himself, touches life as it is really lived by all of us, Christian or not. Looking back over the questions 5 through 8, we might wish to make other observations from a Christian standpoint, but these are enough to illustrate that when we read worldviewishly as Christians, we should be aware that our own worldview may suggest alternatives or support specific elements we have discovered as we read carefully. One important value of reading is first to see others as they see themselves, and then to see them from a biblical perspective. We thus come to understand better our neighbors, our society, ourselves, and even God. General principles of reading worldviewishly. Through our analysis of McCorduck's essay, we have seen a practical illustration of reading worldviewishly. It is always possible that techniques and principles employed in one case will not fit others. McCorduck's essay, for example, takes up an issue that raised a number of worldview type questions. Not every essay does that. Is it possible, for instance, to read the daily newspaper at this level? Can we discover the worldview of a Bernstein or a Woodward from reading the reports in the Washington Post? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. Every essay, every report contains a different set of details, some revealing a specific worldview, some not. Of course, every statement written or spoken will reveal something not explicitly stated. For example, the fact of language, the fact of communication, and so forth. Each of these eventually fits into the author's ultimate intellectual frame of reference. But not all essayists bear their worldview as readily as Mick Corduck has in this one short piece. But so be it. Our attempt to read worldviewishly will be amply rewarded as we read the major essays in magazines such as The Atlantic, Harper's Saturday Review, Commentary, Esquire, Rolling Stone, and numerous others. The general essays in Time often betray a basic worldview, as do editorials in the daily paper and Sunday supplements. In fact, we can learn a great deal about the cultural terrain of our time by reading such material regularly. Nonfiction books can also be profitably read worldviewishly. And if these books represent important cultural trends, or if they are read widely and influence the society around us, reading them worldviewishly can lead us to profound understanding of our age. Alvin Toffler's Future Shock, long on the bestseller list, my charts, informed hundreds of thousands of readers, and it did so from an explicit worldview, naturalism. Carlos Castaneda's bestsellers, and the most recent of which is The Second Ring of Power, displays updated animism and new consciousness orientation. So do Theodore Roszak's books such as Where the Wasteland Ends. Popular sex manuals often reveal the roots in either naturalism, and more specifically in hedonism, or in some form of Eastern pantheism, where the body is sexually tuned to the rhythms of nature and thus becomes an instrument of spiritual as well as physical ecstasy. Worldviews are evident in fiction and poetry too. Robert Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, for example, is all about changing one's worldview and has almost nothing to do with Zen. Chaim Potak's readable novels, such as The Chosen or My Name is Asher Lev, are fascinating studies in the clash between worldviews, as seen, respectively, by a brilliant young Jewish scholar and a sensitive young Jewish painter. But this is to encroach on the following chapters. While each genre of writing requires somewhat different reading techniques, there are, I believe, some helpful principles that apply to most reading. If, as you try to apply these principles to a particular piece, any of them fails to yield results, abandon it and use what applies. Okay, you might want to write these in your notes too, along with the checklist we just worked on for Thursday. Do not try to read fast. Read at your normal rate or more slowly. Speed reading may be of value for some things, but not for reading worldviewishly. Read with a pen or pencil in hand. Underline passages and terms and allusions which the author seems to be most interested in. This will come in handy as you attempt to find the thesis statement and the structure of the argument. If you are reading a book rather than an article or essay, read the preface, the beginning, them talking about the book, what it's about, and any other introductory material. This will often tell you what the author thinks he is doing, or may give you valuable insight into his presuppositions, the methods he employs, and so forth. Use a dictionary or other reference works, such as a desk encyclopedia, for all words and concepts you do not understand. One way to increase your vocabulary is to write the definition that applies above the word itself. There is a side benefit. You will learn to write small. Underline major organizational words such as first, second, etc. First, second, after, before, those are organizational words. This will help you understand the structure of the argument. You may wish to write numbers in the margins alongside important terms in the argument so that later you can grasp the organizational flow. Writing styles differ so much that each essay will suggest its own method of marginal notation. After reading the essay or chapter, immediately review it and locate the thesis. Most essays or chapters contain one sentence or paragraph or brief section, which says in a nutshell what is going to be discussed or has been discussed. Usually this will be either near the beginning or near the end. In McCorduck's essay, the thesis is most fully expressed in the second and the last paragraphs. Often accompanying the thesis will be a brief capsule summary of the whole piece. This will provide the focus for your understanding of the whole essay. So underline this section or sections and write the thesis in the margin. Construct and note in the margin a crude outline of the entire essay or chapter. This is to help you see the way the author argues. It may lead you to discern how he thinks and why he believes his reasons are valid. This, as we saw in McCorduck's essay, may lead us to uncover important elements of his worldview. With a book, it is often helpful to study the table of contents. Some give an elaborate breakdown of the flow of the argument. Even the barest of chapter titles will be of some help to you as you try to discern the general pattern of the book. 8. Determine the genre of the piece you are reading. Ordinarily, this is easy and will not sound very important. You know you are reading an essay or a poem, a novel, or a drama, and so forth. Nonetheless, if a poem is written in the first person, you may want to ask if it is autobiographical or if the poet is writing in persona. Literary forms which cross the boundaries of fiction and history, such as historical novels, Tale of Two Cities, The Three Musketeers, and fictionalized history, The Confessions of Nat Turner, Roots, also force you to ask questions about what is fact and what is imagination. You also need to be sure that you have correctly identified the writer's relation to his material. Is he being facetious, satiric? Just a minute, I gotta plug my computer in, and I don't think I can, so I'm gonna finish this later after I plug in the computer. Okay, I'm back. It's plugged in. Let's see. You also need to be sure you have correctly identified the writer's relation to his material. Is he being facetious, satiric, humorous, or straight? The stance of the author may vary throughout the piece, and it is important to notice any shifts in approach. Otherwise, you may take a satire for serious comment, or vice versa. It is also helpful to ask whether the writer is primarily seeking to inform or to persuade. It will be easier to detect the worldview underlying an argument than that underlying a piece which only seeks to inform. Consider if and how the author has achieved his purpose. What kind of evidence does he draw on? What authorities does he cite? Does he criticize? Why? What objections does he take into consideration? Does he refute them? How? Up to this point, there has been nothing particularly worldviewish about these reading techniques. They just make good sense, and many people are quite familiar with them. The suggestions which follow, however, are specifically designed to elicit from the text the worldview actually embodied here. A reader cannot answer these questions, however, without being clear about the essay itself on its own terms. If you jump past the earlier study, you are almost certain to misread when you consider the following crucial issues. While the first 8 items are cast as principles or techniques to follow or do, the next items are cast in the form of questions to ask as you closely examine the work you are reading. What does the author consider to be prime reality or really real? Does he or she believe God exists? What is God like? Is God personal or impersonal, infinite or finite, one or many? What relationship does God have to the cosmos, to human events, to people, to the author himself? What does the author consider to be the nature of the external universe? Is it matter only or spirit only or combination? Is it basically orderly or chaotic? What causes events or changes in the world? According to the author, what is the nature of humanity? Are human beings personal or impersonal at their most essential? Is a person a machine, an organism, a gestalt, a spirit, or some combination? What, if anything, distinguishes human beings from animals or other animals? How are human beings related to God, if he is held to exist? Do people have control over themselves, or are all their actions determined or programmed? If they have free will, how is this possible in light of the nature of God and the universe? What is mankind's essential situation or predicament today? What, if anything, is wrong with the person as an individual or with mankind in society? Is there any solution to mankind's predicament? What? Why will this solution be effective? What is the basis for human knowledge? How is it that we can know and know what we know? You can add any or all of these questions to your checklist to help you determine the worldview of whatever you're watching or reading or anything like that. According to the author, what happens to a human being at death? Is a person as such annihilated or transformed into what? When does a person come into being? Is death the end of all earthly existence? Or is reincarnation a possibility? Under what circumstances? According to the author, what is the basis for morality? This is a more fundamental question than what values does the author affirm? It gets to the root of all his or her values. Is value only the creation of each person, of society at large, of a transcendent God? Is there an absolute good? Where is it found? When values come in conflict, how can the conflict be resolved? According to the author, what is the meaning of history? Does history have any meaning at all? Is history the plan of God? Is the meaning of history the meaning any one person gives it? Or is it the sum of all the meanings all people give it? Is history linear or cyclical? That is, do human events have a uniqueness such that they will never be repeated, or do they eternally recur? Is time a meaningful category, or do real events happen only in a timeless realm? If this is the first time you have seen so many tough questions all in one place, you may want to throw up your reading glasses in despair. How can one answer them all? Are you sure that they can be answered by reference to the text? Well, obviously some can be answered, and as we saw with McCorduck's essay, some cannot. But even if those questions could be answered, would it not take a long time to do so? Yes, at first. Principle 1 is to forget about speed reading. Nonetheless, as you practice reading worldviewishly, you will find it easier and easier. And we will practice that together as we read the books that are recommended from our Starting Points textbook. You will find it easier and easier. It will probably become second nature. Eventually, you may even be able to speed read worldviewishly, though do not place much credence in what you glean this way. Do not make any decisions based on speed reading, any decision at all, except maybe to decide what to read with care. Speed reading is of value only for picking up facts and for eliminating careful reading of some things. For serious business, even for entertainment, don't play games. Read with your mind. Theseus, the lunatic, the lover, and the poet are of imagination all compact. One sees more devils than vast hell can hold. That is the madman, the lover, all as frantic, sees Helen's beauty in a brow of Egypt. The poet's eye is a fine frenzy rolling, doth glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven, and as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2, what we were supposed to read, and I will put the questions in the post.